are to proceed to alternate Tenerife.
Heeding the tower command, Captain Bragg and his crew now redirect their jumbo jet to Tenerife's Los Rodeos airport, about 25 minutes away on the island of Santa Cruz de Tenerife.
And we contacted the tower, and they immediately said,
"You are clear to land, runway 30 in Tenerife."
the weather was perfectly clear. We could see the airport from about 15 miles out. We saw probably 50 airplanes that had been diverted there, because this was around 3 in the afternoon on Sunday afternoon. So the whole ramp area was completely congested.
Clipper 1736, taxi and exit at the end of the runway and hold a position behind the KLM ahead of you.
Our parking area was the 4th position in a line of 4 airplanes. So there were 3 other airplanes in front of us, including KLM, which was directly in front of us.
KLM Flight 4805, another 747 carrying 234 passengers and 14 crew members, had also been diverted from Las Palmas to Tenerife because of the terrorist threat. The captain on the KLM is Jacob van Janten, KLM's chief pilot and principal flight instructor. First officer is Klaus Mears, a newly trained co-pilot that Captain van Janten had himself tested on a similar craft just 6 months prior. Behind Mears sits the flight engineer, William Schroeder. Now, crew and passengers on all the diverted aircraft wait at the Tenerife airport, unsure how long a delay lay ahead. The sight of stacked jumbo jets was enough to draw interest from the local residents, one of whom took this, the only photograph, showing Captain Bragg's Pan Am 747 lined up directly behind the KLM jumbo. Among the Pan Am flight attendants were Suzanne Donovan and Joan Jackson.
The passengers, as I recall, were not allowed to deplane, which was why we were doing a service on the ground, giving them whatever we had.
But I don't remember anyone being really overwhelmingly dismayed at this. That was just a little glitch that was going to pass.
Likewise, aboard the KLM flight, cockpit crew and passengers hunker down for a wait. Perhaps they take comfort in the career achievements of their pilot, who is featured in their complimentary issue of KLM's In-Flight magazine.
And finally, we heard the tower operator say,
"Gentlemen, be advised that Las Palmas is now open."
About 3:45, news of this announcement from the tower comes as a relief to everyone. Planes have been grounded for almost 2 hours. But the wait isn't over yet. Now KLM Captain Jacob van Janten makes an unusual decision to refuel. His action is unnecessary. Records later show that the plane had sufficient reserves. The Pan Am crew was surprised and annoyed by the delay.
the captain, Vic Grubbs, called KLM and asked him, KLM 4805, how long will you take to refuel? And the KLM pilot responded very abruptly.
35 minutes.
So the captain then looked at me and said, well, I guess we're stuck behind him. And then I, sitting on the right side of the airplane, made the comment, well, maybe we can get around him. Would you like the engineer, George Warrens, and I to go out and measure the distance between our right wing and his left wing? And we were 12 feet inside of his wing clearance. So we were 12 feet short of getting around him. Basically, we waited 35 minutes for the KLM plane to refuel. Now, on a look-back basis, if we'd have had 2 wing walkers being people that stand on your wingtip and visually give you a clearance, we could have possibly gotten around him, but we had no feeling of any absolute necessity to get this done.
Rerouted flights, an odd decision to refuel, 12 feet of clearance. So begins the terrible list of seemingly unrelated details that would ultimately form links in a deadly chain. In the 35 minutes it will take for the KLM to refuel, yet another adverse condition descends upon the runway at Tenerife.
A fog bank comes down off the side of this hill and stops right on the runway.
And that fog is to become a funeral shroud for 583 men, women, and children. On the afternoon of March 27, 1977, in Spain's Canary Islands,
Las Palmas is closed.
a terrorist bomb detonates at Las Palmas Airport, causing dozens of arriving flights to be rerouted to Tenerife, a neighboring island with a single runway airfield. Pan American Flight 1736 from New York, co-piloted by Captain Bragg, is one of 2 jumbo jets now assembled in a lineup, awaiting instruction from air traffic control at Tenerife. Parked directly in front of the Pan Am Jumbo is KLM Flight 4805 out of Amsterdam, piloted by veteran captain Jacob van Janten. After an almost 3-hour ground delay, the tower finally clears all flights for departure to their original destinations.
Gentlemen, be advised that Las Palmas is now open.
Unfortunately, the KLM pilot's decision to refuel will result in an additional 35-minute delay for his flight and all those behind him, including the Pan Am Jumbo. Finally, at 4:58 p.m., after filling the KLM's tank with an additional 14,500 gallons of fuel, co-pilot Klaus Mears contacts the Tenerife Tower for permission to taxi for takeoff.
We require a backtrack on 12 for takeoff, runway 30.
Okay, KLM A0, correction, 4805, taxi straight ahead for the runway and make back track.
Roger, make a backtrack.
Because Tenerife's airport is small, departing planes must backtrack to lift off. That means taxiing down the runway to the end, then turning around to take off in the same direction they originally came from.
There was a DC-9 in the number 1 position. There was a DC-8 in the 2nd position, or the number 2 position. Then KLM was in the number 3 position. We were in the number 4 position. They gave the clearances, taxi clearance, to the first 2 airplanes, and it was thus that they were to taxi and backtrack down the runway. In other words, they taxied down the runway in the opposite direction of where they're going to be taking off. When you get to the last taxiway on your left, exit the runway and position back.
At 4:59 p.m., KLM Flight 4805 begins to taxi down the runway.
Approach. You want us to turn left at Charlie 1? Taxiway Charlie 1?
Negative. Taxi straight ahead up to the end of the runway and make back track.
Okay, sir.
A few minutes later at 5:02, Pan Am is instructed to follow KLM's taxi down the runway. But unlike KLM, the Pan Am flight is to turn off at one of the several taxi exits and wait. This in order to clear the runway for KLM to lift off. It's with these instructions that confusion starts to arise. It is unclear to the pilots of the Pan Am flight exactly which taxi exit traffic control intends for them to take.
We got the instructions from the tower.
Pan Am 1736, take 3rd taxiway to your left.
We had just passed C2. If, as some people have contended, we were supposed to take Charlie 3, that taxiway takes you right back into the terminal area. All of the taxiways on that terminal were blocked, so we'd have not been anywhere. We'd have had to just wait there again.
Feeling that the Charlie 3 taxiway must not be their intended destination, the Pan Am crew calls the tower again for clarification.
The 3rd one said 123, the third one.
Since their jet has already passed the 1st exit, in telling them to take the 3rd exit, the crew believes the tower intends for them to exit at C4, the 3rd exit from C1.
The other airplane had done the very same thing. It was the logical taxiway to get off the runway on. So we all felt very confident that that was the taxiway that we were supposed to depart the runway on.
And then, just when things are teetering dangerously out of control, fate strikes. A thick fog suddenly descends on the airfield.
And I looked out the window and I said to Suzanne, we're not going anywhere. I can't even see the number 2 engine, which is the inboard engine. I knew our regulations at Pan Am.